Hello, everybody. We're going to give this one more try. This has been a real mess of a week for me, and I apologize for it because you guys have had to pay. I know you're waiting for this recording to get there, and it hasn't been there. So, lots of technical issues and then some personal issues today. But here we go. We'll give it a try. No camera. I've found that to work better. Maybe I can get some decent audio out of here. Anyhow, welcome to the class. My name's Charlie Border. I'll be your professor in the class. And I think you'll find it to be an interesting and a fun class. And I always try and make my classes interesting by having relevant, modern, up-to-date projects and things that we talk about. And I especially want to do it in this class because I think this is a really interesting subject. I teach other classes that relate to these sort of topics, things like web design. You know, it's an intro level web design course, but you know what? We deal with things like layouts and colors and persuasion and how to, what size fonts work well together. All of those kind of things that drive the students in that class crazy, at least some of them. But others love it because that's what they want to get into computing for. Well, analytics can be a very dry topic if you let it be that way, but I think the visual side of analytics, the persuasive side of analytics, where the object isn't to get the right number, but in fact help people to understand what your point is, to understand what they want, because usually you're going to be working for someone else in developing your analyses, and finding out what that group or person wants out of your analysis, and then coming up with some sort of a presentation that allows you to get that point across. That's the point of visual analytics, and I think that's a really interesting point. So I think we'll have fun with this class. I hope that you enjoy it, and we'll keep on going in here, and hopefully this presentation will work. Come on. His PowerPoint crashed on me already. Not quite, but it was touch and go there. So announcements. I'm always going to have announcements as like the second slide in my deck because this is my time to talk to you about things and to get my point across. So my office hours are normally 12:30 till 2 on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and that's fine for my on-campus classes. But if that doesn't work for you, well, get in touch with me. If you want to talk to me, let me know. Then we can meet via Zoom or phone or email or, whatever it is. But I'm happy to work with you and figure out how we can get together. The rhythm for the class that I'm anticipating is that I'll put out new recordings for the class every Monday. Probably afternoon. I have another class with the students in Kosovo on Monday and Wednesday, and that's done by 12:15. So my plan is to make the recording before my Kosovo class and then render it after my Kosovo class and then post it after that. So that's my plan. Let's hope I can stick through it. All assignments that we have for the class are going to be coordinated through my courses. We'll just use that for everything. All of your assignments are already posted out there, not the description of the assignment, but the due dates and all those things. So you can see that if you'd like. I've got two other sections of this class that I'm teaching this semester, and I listed the time and location for those classes so that if you are on campus, and some are and some aren't, but if you are on campus and you want to come to class, well, you're welcome to come. There's empty seats in each one of those classes, so physically you can come sit in and listen to the lecture if you want, or not. That's up to you. But we'll keep all the assignments and everything will be coordinated through the My Courses section that's set up for our online class. So there you go. We've got a couple of different textbooks for this class, only one of which I'm going to use to make assignments out of, and that's this Nussbaumer text, Storytelling with Data. It's a really good text. I think you're going to like it. It's an industry text, so it's only like $25 or something like that. And and she does a really nice job of telling you the things that help to make your presentation stand out. Things like what colors go good together, what charts are useful for displaying categorical data versus continuous data. Those kind of things really make a difference. And she also goes into kind of a rant, as a matter of fact, when you get right down to it, about how she hates pie charts and donut charts. So maybe we shouldn't use those. But anyhow, so this is available via Amazon. I didn't put it into the bookstore just because they just jack up the price. So you might as well get it right from Amazon, and you can have it within a day or so. So that's it for that. Now there's another text. And I'll probably post something because I usually, wave this around in front of the camera. It's called The Big Book of Dashboards, Visualizing Your Data for Real-World Business Scenarios. And it's by Wexler. And it's really good, mostly because it goes through and critiques different examples of dashboards. So it has dashboards for lots of different topics. And it critiques each one of those. It says, this is the good points of this dashboard. These are the bad points of the dashboard. That is really useful to have done by somebody who really knows what they're doing. So, that's another book that you might want to, if you do this for a living, you're going to buy that book. So, you might as well. And so, I'll post, links to it and stuff in my courses. And once again, I'm only going to have assignments out of the Nussbaumer text, but if you want to get the other one, and there's a third classic text that I have a PDF of that I posted in my courses. It's by Tufte, and you'll see it in the reading section of my courses. Course assignments. Well, the course is going to be made up of 4 team labs. And these team labs, I think you'll find to be really interesting. They'll be fun, at least. Sorry about the dog. Okay, so we're going to have 4 main assignments for the class. Now you can see that the first one is called Azure DevOps Semester Plan. So Azure DevOps is a project management kind of project planning tool that's used by lots of organizations to organize teams, to make it so that teams can coordinate their activities, especially at a distance and, the normal stuff these days. Well, as a student at RIT, you get a free license with Microsoft's Azure DevOps, and I'll show you a link a little bit later to it. And we're going to use that throughout the course on these team-based assignments. Why? Well, the thing about working in technology is that you never work alone. You're always working as part of a team. And so if I can get you used to working with a tool like this that's designed specifically with that in mind, I think it'll be a big help for you. So first off, first assignment, you're going to get organized for the semester. And that's going to be getting teams together, getting licenses together for everything that you need, figuring out who's going to be a project manager on which project, and so on and so forth. And so that'll be the first assignment. Now the next assignment I think you'll find interesting, and that's an e-commerce or ERP project. And the reason I have an e-commerce assignment is because I think many of you will end up working in e-commerce, just because analytics and e-commerce goes together like peanut butter and jelly. And so getting exposed to the different vocabulary and the domain knowledge around e-commerce, I think, is a really useful thing to be able to do. Now, I gave you an alternative. If you don't want to do e-commerce, you could do something like enterprise resource planning, ERP. Now, an ERP system is designed to help large organizations coordinate their production plans across the multiple locations where they build parts of their products. So, no organization starts out with iron oxide and coal, and then at one end of the shop line, and then turns out a car at the other end. It just doesn't happen like that. So, every organization is always coordinating their activities with suppliers and sub-suppliers and sub-sub-sub-suppliers, and then they are in turn a supplier to somebody else. How is all of that coordinated? Well, through an ERP system. And so you can imagine all the analytics that has to exist around ERP systems to try and coordinate these really complex production lines and supply chains. And so that's what that one's about. And, full employment, if you want to work every day for the rest of your life, you can, become really good at ERP, and you'll never be looking for work. You'll never be not working for a single day because you'll be in demand so much. Now, the next project is kind of a fun one. In BigQuery, the tool that we're going to use from Google to do part of our work, they have a whole bunch of. Hold on. Okay, sorry about that. And so the next assignment is going to be one where we use the Chicago crime data set in Google's BigQuery. And students have always enjoyed that one because, we've all watched NCIS, and you guys all grew up watching all those cop shows, and here's the real data. And it's pretty interesting, but there's a heavy dose of domain knowledge that you need to have before you can make heads or tails out of it. How is the city of Chicago organized? What are these different types of crimes that they're talking about? All of those kind of things you need to understand before you can do a good job with doing any analytics around it. So you're going to have to learn that domain knowledge, and that's good because it's interesting. Now, the kind of questions that you might want to ask with this crime data are things like, where do the most crimes in the city of Chicago happen? Why? Because that's where you want to assign your police officers to patrol more frequently. If a neighborhood doesn't have any crime, don't assign any cops there. But if there's a lot of crime in a neighborhood during a specific day of the week, during a specific time during that day, that's where you want to assign your police. So that's kind of an interesting project, and I think you'll have fun with that one. The last one is a health or ecology project. Well, on the health side, there's tons of data out there around COVID, as you can imagine, and kind of questions that you might want to answer about that is, where did COVID strike the hardest? What was the ramp up in all these different towns? Could you develop a graph that showed the spread of COVID in a particular area by zip code, by state, by locality, by demographics, by whether they voted for whoever? Those are interesting questions that you can answer with these cool public data sets. Now, if you're not interested in that, I thought, well, what about ecology? If you wanted to do something based on things like bird migrations or something along those lines, fascinating. And that data is available also. And you can imagine how beautiful the dashboards and stuff that you could put together around bird migrations. How fun is that? So those are the projects that we're going to do, the team labs, and every one of those team labs will start out with an Azure DevOps project summary and a plan. Why? Because that's how we start new projects, not by hammering away on the keyboard. Instead, by developing a plan, thinking about what's the question we're going to answer, what's the data that we have available to us, who in our team is going to do what. If you have a team of 3, which is what I suggest, then you can have one person play the role of project manager, and they can do the upfront work, the things like figuring out what data you're going to use, figuring out how to divide up the project into different tasks, what makes sense in that area of having somebody do something and somebody do something else. You might have, for instance, one person handle the SQL side of things, because we're going to have to write SQL queries that's going to extract the data that we want from these huge public data sets, and then push that over into what the data looker, which is a charting tool that works really well. It's pretty cool. And then maybe somebody else does the data looker side, and maybe the project manager, along with doing the initial setup kind of things, maybe they do the wireframes that help the person who's doing the charts to know what's the layout of your dashboard for this particular project. So I think it'll be kind of interesting, and it lends itself to teams, and I think it'll be kind of fun with that. I think that you should rotate who's the project manager so that everybody gets a chance to try that. A lot of our students, love to do the technology, but they just can't see themselves hammering away on a keyboard for their whole career. So, they're kind of interested in what it would take to become a manager of some sort or another. And here's a chance. Project management, great job, really interesting, hard to do because technical people are hard to manage. You can't yell at them and whip them and force them to to type in 5,000 lines of code every day. That's just not the way that it works. And so there's a knack to being a project manager, particularly in technical teams. So I think it might be interesting. So we'll take turns and stuff. We'll rotate things around and try different, give people time to try being different, playing different roles in these assignments, and I think it'll be kind of interesting. Yeah, man. Okay, and you'll also have a final team project. Now, the final team project is a topic of your choosing, and that's why it's so interesting. You get to figure out what's the topic that you want to work on. And I think you'll enjoy this. Once we get rolling, you'll start getting used to the workflow, and you'll start looking at these public data sets that are out there and say, man, that's it. There's a lot of good stuff in there. And this is interesting to me. I really like ecology data, or I really like crime data. And you could turn that into a final team project. Now, the workflow that happens around that final team project starts with, just like everything else, an Azure DevOps project plan, which you'll put together with your team, and then you'll submit that to my courses, and I'll give you feedback on it. So on March 28th, yep, that's March 28th, you'll submit your Azure DevOps project plan for your final team project. On the 1st, April 1st, April Fool's Day, I'll give you feedback. What do I think? Is it good? Is it bad? How could you make it more interesting? Have you thought about this? Have you thought, those kind of things. But here's the difference. So in a lot of classes, people give you projects to work on, but they never give you any time to work on those projects. And I know, distance students are mostly working students. And so you guys have jobs, you have responsibilities, you have all this stuff going on. So what I'll do is I will give you time that would normally be used on class stuff. I'll allow you to work on your project during that time. Now, the good thing about that is that you've all allocated time in your schedule for this class. Well, use that time that's already allocated to work on this project. And I think that'll, do a good job for you. Now, I give you, a couple of weeks to work on this. Why? I make it a significant part of your grade. I think this is really important. I think it's worth spending some time on. And then at the end of your project, you'll do a project presentation. And that'll just be, like a 20-minute recording or, whatever. That's fine. And I'll make those URLs available for everybody else so that you can see the work that your colleagues did. Now, this last bit here, so can use same team as for other assignments, but you can change teams. Sometimes people don't participate in group projects. And yet they're more than happy to come around when a good grade's coming through from the work of other people. Well, if somebody doesn't participate in your earlier projects, you have the right to kick them out and have them, not be part of your final team project. Now, I'm going to back you up on that and run interference if I can, but, you can do that. Now, you may want to change teams around for other reasons than non-participation, and that's okay too. But this is about, it's about the only thing that I can do to make it so that that people really have to work on projects together. It's a hard thing for me to do. It's a hard thing for you to do. And, it's unpleasant all the way around. So everybody work in your teams, all right? Now, the last thing we'll have for this assignment, although it's not really the last, is a final exam. And that final exam I will post on March 26th, and it will be due on March 30th. So you'll get like 4 days to work on it. And it's going to be an essay format exam where I'll give you, 6 or 8 questions, and you have to choose 2 and then respond to those questions with 2 completely separate 3 to 5 page essays. Okay? Now, why do I do it so early in the semester? Well, if you'll notice, this is, the time of the semester when we're done with our team labs. I'm done with my lectures. This is, now if I give you the final exam on the 26th, that means that the rest of the time for the class, you can spend working on your project. And of course, that's exactly what I want you to do, is to spend time concentrating on that project and not have to worry about the final exam when you're working on your project, because you'll already be done with the final exam. How cool is that? So project ideas, here's the one thing that I'm going to say about that, and that's that you must use multiple data sources for your projects. You can't do it all, your entire project, out of one public data set. So what that means is that if you use the Chicago crime data, you might need to think about things like, what's the socioeconomic status of the people who live in this neighborhood. Well, that's probably not in the Chicago crime data set, but it's in some other demographic data set that you can get about Chicago. And so by merging those 2 data sets together, you can look at socioeconomic status and crime and bring those 2 together to look at some other sides of what was available just from the one data set. So I hope you find that interesting. You can do the whole project in BigQuery and Data Looker, and we'll talk about those in just a second here. Your project should be related to your final capstone. Everybody has to do a capstone. And that's a significant work that shows your creativity, that's all about you, it's your ideas, it's your everything. Well, think about the project for this class as a step toward getting you ready, maybe acquiring domain knowledge or just getting used to working with BigQuery and DataLooker that you can then use as part of your final project. That's a good way to do things. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's completely legit. Your project should be interesting to your team. You've got to sell this to your other team members. And if a part of your team doesn't want to do that project, you may have to find a different project. But I'm wide open to discuss topics that you're interested in. But most of all, I want you to be creative. When you go to find work in this area, people are going to ask, did you do any interesting projects in grad school? Well, here's your chance. Here's your chance to say, this is me, this is who I am, this is how hard I work, this is me figuring out this domain that, I really don't know that much about, but you know what, I don't know that much about your company either. So here's an example of me figuring something out and turning it into a useful and interesting project. I love that. All right, so here's some URLs. So what you need to do this week is to start getting organized. And things that you need to get organized on are things like getting your accounts working. And some of the accounts that you're going to need to use is your Google account. And yeah, I know everybody in the entire world has a Google account, but get yours organized. Now you can see the URL that I'm working from here. This is console.cloud.google.com, and you may have to do a few flips and twists with your Google account, but it'll all work out. You're working in my project 55026. You always have to name your project. And you can see that, Google, I didn't name this, Google assigned some sort of computer name to it. And so, you need to have some sort of name on there also. This is just an example. Let's see, we're still on console.google.com, BigQuery, project, blah, blah, blah. And so this is just an example of some of the things that you can see. This is the Chicago crime data set. And just a couple of little points here. Anytime it says sandbox up here, that means it's free. Okay? I think the limit that you have, and you should probably check this, the limit that you have is that you get 3 terabytes of queries per month for free in BigQuery. Well, what BigQuery does, the way they actually do their queries, is they take these big, wide, lots and lots and lots of columns, analytics data sets, and as part of your SQL query, the first thing you do is you select only the few columns that you really are interested in. And what BigQuery does is the initial part of your query, when it runs that, the first thing it does is to chop off all those extra columns. So you may start with a data set that's 3 gigs, but as soon as you start to run your query, it'll say the volume of the query, and it's going to be in the tens or hundreds of megabytes. And that's it. Why? Chopped off all those extra columns that you didn't need. So if you're working in the megabyte range, you're never going to get to the terabyte range. And so I don't think you'll have any problem with that 3 terabytes per month hard limit. The other thing to pay attention to is this upgrade button. Don't do it. What that means is turn this free tool into a pay tool. So, if you work in industry, yeah, you're going to want to pay for it because, I don't know why. People like to pay for things. But, when you're just doing this for a class, you don't want to pay for it. So don't click on upgrade. Don't do it. Resist. So what if you don't know how to work with BigQuery and DataLooker Studio? Well, as an RIT student, oh, by the way, I'm not going to be teaching you, click here, click here, click here. I don't do that. You guys are grad students. My job as professor is to point you at technologies and things and say, hey, that's interesting. You should learn that. And then you need to figure out how to learn it. Well, that's what everybody does all the time in technology these days. So it shouldn't be anything new to you. Now, you could go out and watch a whole bunch of YouTube videos. Love it. Great. Perfect. But if that's not your style, as an RIT student, you get free access to LinkedIn Learning. And here's a data analytics with Google Cloud BigQuery and Looker Studio. Tell a story with data using Google Cloud BigQuery and Looker Studio. How's that for perfect? That's, it's probably 2 hours long or something like that. And it'll do the click here, click here, click here kind of stuff. So, that's available to you. I told you we're going to be working with Azure DevOps. Well, how do you do that? Well, here's your URL, dev.azure.com, and then CBBICS, that's me. And so you'll log in and, create accounts and all that stuff. But this is your Microsoft account. So, everybody's got one of those too. And so, these are some of the projects that I've worked with students on in the past. Now, a couple of things. So you'll notice that I'm here under my CBBICS, ISTE 430. You saw that project before. Settings and overview. Well, here's my project settings. And then in the overview section of the project settings, what you want to make sure is that your process is set up as Agile. Once you get that set up, everything else kind of flows. But you're probably going to want to use an Agile methodology just because that's what most companies use these days. Now, what if you don't know how to work with Azure DevOps? Well, YouTube videos if you want, or back to LinkedIn Learning. Azure DevOps for beginners, using Azure DevOps to enhance application development. Perfect! So, yeah. There's lots of stuff out there. You're going to have to get used to it, and that's just the way it goes. So for your project summary, now for your final team project, I'm going to have you use this format. Now you'll notice that this is kind of an academic-y format, and that's exactly what it is, and that's what we're going to use, and we'll go over that later. Your project presentation. Just a brief outline, easy to work with. We'll talk more about that too. And then finally, what's this class about? Well, it's called data visualization. What the heck does that mean? Well, what I think that this means, and you can interpret this lots of different ways, I think of it as communicating with data. Accent on the communicating part. I'm a big fan of thinking about almost every problem that there is in computing as not being about computing, but instead being about people. And so I think this is really the case for this class. It's all about communicating with people using data. Well, how do you do that? Well, there's some requirements that you're going to have to know. You're going to have to satisfy before you can actually communicate. One of those requirements is that you need to have a pretty good domain knowledge. Now, we're doing projects in e-commerce or ERP, crime, ecology or health. You're going to have to figure out the domain knowledge for those different projects. And you may have to do some just, background research. How do you Google the Chicago crime data set? Find out what other people have used it for. Find out, how is the city of Chicago organized? Is it by boroughs or is it by villages? Is it by whatever? I don't know. But you're going to have to figure out that domain knowledge. Now, the next thing you need is a very well understood question. And by, understood by whom? Well, there's a couple of parties involved in any of these projects. Now, like I said, the way I think of your role in an organization is that you have a customer, somebody who comes to you and says, I need help developing a presentation or getting the data or asking the questions about this topic. And you would say to them, what's your goal for doing this? What, who am I communicating with? And then they would tell you, and you would use the domain knowledge of the person who asks you to do the work and the domain knowledge and background of the people that you're presenting to, and try and come up with a way to get this to persuade the people of what you want them to persuade them of. Complicated, but there you go. You need access to data. What's the data that you actually need to come up with the answer that you're looking for? You need a plan for your group. Once again, you're not going to be working on your own. You're going to be working as part of a group. Well, you need a plan for that. Who's going to do what? How are you going to organize your work? You need an understanding of the different charts and what they work best for, because some charts work good for some things and some charts work better for something else. And then last, and probably least, is access to technology. So you can see where most of what I think of for this class has to do with people. It's only at the end where I start thinking about the technology. And that's the way it should be. I like it that way. So anyhow, that's our first week's class. I'm sorry I went so long this week, but I'm going to try and keep it under half an hour every week. So welcome to the class, and I hope you enjoy it. So take care, everybody. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.